Good morning and welcome into another edition of Mic'd Up here on Pittsburgh Sports Live and, of course, Pittsburgh Sports Now and Steelers Now and all throughout the Now family of networks. This is your Hump Day broadcast. This is your Wednesday show here. And, of course, Mic'd Up is presented by Martin Lawn Services. Hit up Doug Martin at 412-849-5894. And we were wrong. We predicted this weeks ago, but this being the week that James Conner finds a new NFL team, he does not return to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So any potential dreams of that with his reduced money and how he's been waiting goes away. He ends up signing a one-year deal, $1.25 million with the Arizona Cardinals. We are, of course, going to touch on that. We are going to discuss how that impacts the Steelers' current depth chart and maybe the draft, and then also talk some Pittsburgh Pirates, former Pirates on a no-hitter recently. What else is new? Leaves Pittsburgh, becomes Roger Clemens, and also how the Pirates have been playing recently, because as I touched on last night's postgame show, they've been playing better, certainly offensively. And we maybe will also touch on anything else going on here with the Pittsburgh Pirates here in the world of sports right now. But to get things started, Mike, James Conner leaves. $1.25 million, so it's not like he breaks the bank. We hear the news a couple days earlier that he actually got injured during the offseason, so not good for him. He's supposed to be back, though, by June. He joins Pittsburgh West in Arizona, and he actually does get to play with J.J. Watt. It's just not happening in Pittsburgh. What are your thoughts on James Conner in Arizona, the deal that he did get, the value that shows of him? It's $500,000 guaranteed, and then also, or $500,000 on a signing bonus, the 1.25 guaranteed. And then, any other thoughts on that impacting the Steelers? Because right now they're pretty depleted overall running back wise.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic that now that we find out that probably the reason why he wasn't a first day or at least first week guy that signs with the NFL free agent was because of, him getting injured. Right. It's a shame. And I hate to bring up the narrative, and I know fans bring this up, but I think too many people forget, man. The NFL is a tough job. It's not for the weak of heart. And unfortunately, James Conner just is a guy that we don't know that it's why his body is like that.
There's been some bad luck. Yeah.
He gets hurt a lot. Right. Unfortunately, when he does play, he's a pretty good player, as the stats throughout his career indicated. Mm-hmm. However, he's just not reliable enough to be an everyday back just because of his history. And he signs a one-year deal, so let's hope for him. He was always a great guy here with the media, even going back to his time with Pitt. No ill will toward him. Hopefully he is able to, within that offense with Arizona, he's definitely going to have a chance to put up some points because of the way they pass the ball, and it'll take some pressure off the running game, which might be good for him. Yeah. Let's hope he signs that one-year deal and is able to maybe cash in next season if he's able to show that he's healthy. But he was a good guy here on and off the field, and wish nothing but the best. The only thing that makes me wonder a little bit is, considering he only signed a one-year deal for $1 million, does that say anything to you, Mike, about the fact that the Steelers still need a running back, and yet I don't know if it was a mutual decision that it's best for both of us to part. That was the first thing that jumped out to me, that if they needed a running back, why in the hell not call him up and say, hey, James, you want to come back for one more year? It seems like they've done that with a few different people, so why not him?
Especially because the running back room is so depleted right now. Benny Snell is back for another year. Some progress with him, of course, but he needs to take a major step to be more than he would be. Probably a complimentary back. Anthony McFarland talked to a Washington Times reporter last year after the draft, told me he has incredible burst. He thought he could be something. Again, the burst is there, but it's not for a featured back role. He's more of a complimentary back. You're looking at Trey Edmonds. You're looking at Jalen Samuels, who's now a veteran, but clearly just a complimentary back. And actually, Allen had the tweet that's perfect. James Conner's yardage last year, even while being hurt and once again failing to get to 1,000 and not being the featured back, That's the total that every other running back had combined. So the problem with the Steelers running back room right now is I personally don't think they should go running back in the first round just because of the longevity of the position and the risk that's there. I know you think that might be something they should do, but if they can get Najee Harris, I'd be down with it. That seems unlikely. And if it's not Harris, there's not really another elite running back that jumps off the page they can grab. They maybe could get somebody, and I'm sure they're going to draft somebody in the later rounds, but they're probably going to be similar to Benny Snell or McFarland. So basically, I don't see how they go into next season, the offseason after that, any of those, with a better running back group. And I think James Conner being a part of the group would have made the running back group better than really anybody they can get in the draft. Even if they would get Harris, Mike, I'll even say this, even if they get Harris or they do something wild and they get the best running back available and trade into the top 15 or something like that, that player is not going to impact the game with the production, even with Conner being hurt next year, because it's going to be a rookie who's probably going to need a year or so to get started, even though you can have an impact as a running back right away. So I don't see how the running back group is better without James Conner. For me, I agree with you. He's not a featured back. He was a third-round pick. He exceeded maybe expectations. I didn't even think he would do this when he came to the NFL, but clearly not a featured guy. Injuries have been a problem. But at $1.25 million and a signing bonus of less than $1 million at $500,000, that seems like a deal the Steelers could have signed. And it does scream to me like they basically agreed, you're not a featured back. We want to move on. We want to beef up the room. You've been hurt too much. We're just going to part ways mutually and have that be the case despite the respect there. So that's what it screams to me. And it is kind of funny that at that value, because we even talked last week that with him not being signed for so long, is there a chance he actually would return to the Steelers on a one-year deal and try it over again for beef up his value like Juju did? The Steelers clearly weren't interested in doing that with Conner.
Yeah, and I also think that maybe internally, this is just me thinking out loud, but
right.
if the Steelers, maybe know that, hey, we don't want to bring him back just because we know we're moving on with maybe this guy in the draft, or and this guy is going to get our carries, and we're going to, the back they signed, his name's escaping me, from the Camille, from the Charge.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. He could maybe split the carries with whatever back they still will.
Yeah.
So
or
maybe they're being fair to James Conner and just saying, hey, the opportunity is just not going to be here for you this season. And
either that or they think Benny Snell or McFarland is going to progress more than they've been. Because to be fair to Benny Snell, for example, who was drafted a couple years ago out of Kentucky, he's a very young player. Maybe the Steelers believe with more carries, they will progress more. And Mike, it might be as simple as this. They may feel that Conner, who averaged 4.3 yards per carry, which is not bad at all, that's better than Jerome Bettis, who's a Hall of Famer per carry. They may say per carry, you're better individually. You're better than any of these guys, or maybe even anyone we draft next year. But you're just not healthy enough. And if you're missing 4 or 5 games every year, maybe if we give Benny Snell, McFarland, whoever else, someone we draft, whoever we bring in, the carries, that'll be similar production over an expanded period of time, and they'll at least be on the field. It does seem like, I don't think there's any ill will between the Steelers and Conner. No. Yeah, from anyone I talk to, they all love him. He's a great guy, even the teammates. But it does seem like to be a case where they basically agreed he's not a featured back, something that I don't think the Steelers realized that until this season. I think they were holding out hope he could be that guy if he was healthy, but he wasn't healthy enough last year. He wasn't even healthy this offseason. So maybe, that might just be, look, you're just not healthy enough. I don't know. I don't have hopes that he's going to be a featured back in Arizona, but he might be on a solid system with so much offensive weapons there that maybe he can really help that team for sure.
I think that's a great. I think that's a great system out there with him, especially with Kyler Murray and Hopkins. He's going to probably split backs or carries with Chase Edmonds out there. So I think it's a good system. They're pass heavy, but I think that could benefit James Conner in the long run. And as far as what this impact, whoever back is going to come in here, this is this is going to be regardless of what impact they have next year with the Steelers, this is a pick for the future. And just like when they bring in a quarterback in offensive line, it's kind of a weird situation where the Steelers are in, Mike, is because they have parts that can, win some games, but maybe not compete for a championship.
Right.
With players that are ready right now, but they're also going to be reloading with guys for the future, like possibly a left tackle, a new center, a new quarterback in the future, a new running back. So they're kind of in that flux right now between being a team that can compete a little bit and also a team needing to rebuild.
It's tough. I would say that of all the teams in the NFL, in terms of work to do in this year's draft and how difficult it's going to be, the Steelers are right up there because they need to try to still win this year, add some pieces. You would not bring Ben back if you weren't going to try to win this year. They're definitely going to. There are pieces there that can do it. They can make the playoffs. It wouldn't be ludicrous, but it won't be easy either. And they also need to have pieces and players that are for the future. So that's going to be very difficult. Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin have the work. This might be the most difficult draft they have coming up that they've had in a long time because now – they couldn't last year. They need to do the same thing, but last year they could say, okay, we have a couple more years before we have to worry about that. No, this is the time now. This draft is arguably more important than even next year's draft when Ben's gone, because if you didn't do it right this year's draft when Ben leaves, then you're really screwed, and then there's not enough picks to fix things for the future and the present next year. I just on Connor, last thing on Connor with Arizona, I will say they are a pass-first team. The NFL is a pass-first league right now. One thing Connor's going to need to work on to go to that next level and really get that big money, I think, in this 1 year is being a pass catcher. It's not that he can't. It's not that he's not a great receiving running back, but he needs to get really good at that because I would imagine Cliff Kingsbury is going to say to him, look, you're hurt a little bit. You've been banged up a little bit. You can get about 700 yards on the ground. That's great. But so we can have you through the whole year and make you truly an elite back, maybe be a featured back. We're going to do Marshall Faulk. We'll give you 700 yards on the ground and maybe 700 yards as a receiver so that you're still impacting the game with more overall production. And then he can get into the mess of arbitration that Bell wanted to trying to get money on both sides. That's probably what I think they're going to do. So he can't be dropping passes in training camp and missing it that way. He's going to have to figure that out. That'll be how he'll save his career with Kyler Murray and company.
Yep, I agree.
But here again, this Wednesday morning here, mic'd up here, presented by Martin Lawn Services, Mike Vukovican, Mike Osti. To transition, Mike, the Pittsburgh Pirates have been much better. But one note before we get to the Pirates playing better, Joe Musgrove, who was an average starter at best with Pittsburgh, still to me screams like a 2 or a 3 overall. He threw a no-hitter with the Padres. He's from San Diego. It's a cool story. First no-hitter in franchise history in 53 years. And there have been some great pitchers there. They did win a couple pennants, so it is something to say. Thoughts on Musgrove throwing that no-hitter? It just was funny to see it. It just really was more funny than anything else. I don't think he's going to turn into Cy Young, but it was just funny. They actually need him to be great because Blake Snell just last night got chased out of the game, and he's supposed to be their ace, not Musgrove. But do you think this means Joe Musgrove's more than he was in Pittsburgh, and it's going to be a Garrett Cole story? Tyler Glasnow story, or was that more of an aberration with Musgrove's no-hitter?
No, I don't think Joe Musgrove's going to turn into an all-star. However, I think he's going to benefit from a great supporting cast with the offense.
Sure.
He's going to be with a really good team, so his win total might be up. I thought Joe Musgrove was one of my favorite players.
He was a great guy. Yeah.
Just because he had character, he seemed like a AJ Burnett type player as far as a leader, and he gave it his all. But it's just fitting it happens to the Pirates.
Right. It just was ridiculous. Yeah.
It's not going to come back to bite him. He's not going to be. You also got to take into account what the Pirates got back for him. They got 5 players.
Right.
Headlining by the top guy in the 5-player trade was a guy named Hudson Head.
Yes.
Yeah, who's currently rated by Baseball America as Pirates' 6th best prospect. They also got David Bednar in the bullpen. Right. Who I think is a future back end guy.
He's been good.
And a few other guys. So that was part of the plan, but it's just when you couple that with what Glasnow's doing this year, he has a 0.46 ERA.
Yeah, he's a Cy Young candidate right now.
Garrett Cole pitching well, obviously, for the Yankees. That makes it that much tougher. But I said this in Corey Geiger's radio show last week. I think a lot of this is blown up because it's the Pirates and how bad they are as an organization overall.
Right.
The Pirates' problem hasn't been identifying talent. It's been developing talent.
Exactly. 100%.
It's not, they don't know which players to draft and because when Tyler Glasnow was here, Tyler Glasnow was a below average pitcher.
So was Garrett Cole. Well, not Garrett Cole wasn't an ace.
Cole was an average pitcher.
He was an average pitcher. He was not an ace, right?
Right. Glasnow's the guy that I know because he's coming off a outing the other day where he had 14 strikeouts, 2 hits, no runs.
You could argue he's the best pitcher in baseball.
No question. No question. When he was here, the guy couldn't throw a strike. He had his second year with the Pirates where he had his most starts. He had an ERA of 7.69. He pitched 62 innings, 44 walks, and 81 hits. He was just, they couldn't develop players. So it wasn't as though nobody could have forecasted Tyler Glasnow going to Tampa Bay and looking like, Roger Clemens. But hopefully with this new regime coming in with Sherrington, that guys now that are going to be developed by the Pirates, and they're going to actually do it here in Pittsburgh instead of another organization. But I have no problem with them trading Joe Musgrove, but it fits the narrative of whoever leaves here does well.
It also was that Joe Musgrove threw that no-hitter early in the year, not late in the year. So it's still fresh in Pirate fans' mind of the trade. But as you mentioned, David Bednar had that actually, unlike maybe some of the previous moves, I think the one thing that Ben Cherington has done is I could absolutely argue that he's won some of those deals. He actually got equal value back. He got solid value back. You could argue based on how Joe Musgrove pitched as a Pirate, and he was last year's opening day starter, but he wasn't great. He was an average starter at best. He certainly was not anything to what he's been so far with the Padres, or even they think of him. To get that value back was great. So what he was working with, I think Ben Cherington did a great job on that trade. And I don't think Joe Musgrove is going to make an all-star team or be a Cy Young candidate like Garrett Cole, like Tyler Glasnow, like all these pitchers of the last 20 plus years. I think really the development problem, and you hit the nail on the head, is more the Pirates can identify talent overall, but identify pitchers, and they can't develop pitchers more than any other position. Sometimes the position player can be great here. Look at McCutchen, look at others. They just don't give them that second or third deal, and eventually at 30 years old, they leave for whatever reason. But pitchers, they have even given up on earlier, and then we see what they became, but it's not given up on to the sense of they weren't nearly as great. Garrett Cole is right now, if he keeps this up over the next 5 years, he's looking at a Hall of Fame pace potentially. He'll have an argument. He had one of the greater postseasons in baseball history, which is insane to say for 100 years of the sport a couple years ago with Houston. With Pittsburgh, the whole debate the whole time he was here is whether or not he's an ace. He was a number one, but he wasn't that great. Sometimes he would have a great start. The next start out there would be horrible and he'd get chased. You never saw these below 1 ERA months or anything like that from Garrett Cole with Pittsburgh, where he was flame-throwing and dominating everybody else. So they're better outside of Pittsburgh. We'll see what Musgrove does, but I don't have a problem with that trade, no.
One guy that, we're talking, this probably won't get a lot of play, but so far Jamison Tyone isn't tearing things up with the Yankees. 7.56 ERA so far in a couple starts. And last night he was awful. He only went 3 innings, gave up 8 hits and 5 runs.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He left here. He's going to one of the top teams in baseball. And let's be fair, it's only 2 starts. But if we want to say that about Joe Musgrove, how well he's looking, we also have to say that Jamison Tyone hasn't looked very good so far.
No, that's very, very true. Yeah, it's very true. The only defense of Jameson Taillon in comparison, he is coming off of an injury. He's not been as healthy the last couple of years, so it's a comeback story. But the Yankee fans, I'm sure, already want to give up on the man. He got to do better than that, or he won't be lasting the full tenure with New York, especially with that offense. You got to have that be an advantage to you, not be getting chased 3 innings in. Here, as we close up shop here on this Wednesday morning of Mic'd Up, again presented by Martin Lawn Services, 412-849 5894 for the sign there behind Mike's head. I actually recommended a friend of mine call up Doug, so hopefully that happens. I said to mention my name and mention PSN and PSL. But also, Mike, this Pirates team has not only been winning a little bit recently, they've actually won 3 out of their last 4. They won last night 8-4 over San Diego. Now, the Padres are without Tatis Jr., so that is their best player, to be fair to them. But still, that's a great team. That's a team with a lot of hype, and that's a team that bought a lot of players, including Manny Machado, who did play. This is a Pirate team that has now improved from where they were even a week or so earlier, but they've done it mostly thanks to the offense. Chad Kuhl still only went 3 innings into that game. The bullpens had to still do a lot. Do you think the offense can continue this level of play? And how will this change the tinkering of the lineup when Ke'Bryan Hayes returns? Because Phil Evans got to stay in this lineup for me, but you'd imagine Hayes gets third base back, probably hits 2 in the lineup again. Where does Evans go? That easily could trickle down to somebody else. And then what do you do with Polanco, who's already struggling? Does he stay in there now that you're moving in the lineup and you didn't factor Evans in before to your normal plan?
Well, the most encouraging thing, you mentioned the offense as far as the reason why they're winning, short term here. But the last time we talked about how bad the pitching has been.
Yeah.
Three of the last performances, Trevor Cahill, Brubaker, and most importantly, Mitch Keller, they've all gone into the 6th inning. And Cahill had, despite not winning, he had 8 Ks, only gave up 1 run. Brubaker on Sunday, 4 Ks, 1 run. And Mitch Keller, 7 Ks, 1 run. A little theme there. They're getting to the 6th inning, racking up strikeout totals, and they've only given up 1 run, which is keeping the team in the game. So hopefully that continues. Be curious to see what happens once they get a few starts in and the book starts coming out on those guys. But as far as the offense goes, that's a really you're right. They have to keep Phillip Evans in the lineup. I would guess that with how bad their production has been in center field and right field, Evans seems to be a guy that can move around, although the defense will definitely be impacted as far as he won't be a good right fielder.
Sure.
I think he has to move out the right field, and they can move, Polanco to, wherever, the bench.
I mean, that would be nice. It doesn't seem like they're going to do that, though, from who I've talked to, that they want to give him at bats. But he didn't play last night.
Evans in.
Right.
Shelton, he realizes that he's their best hitter right now, hitting 382,
right.
3 home runs. You can't take his bat out of the lineup for a team that isn't hitting. And, and he's going to keep Colin Moran at first base. So there's no really other option. Brian Reynolds isn't coming out of the lineup, and
no,
Evans isn't athletic enough to play center field. So the only position is right field.
That's the outfield position that the weakest defending outfielder often would play, or a center fielder that's been hurt often would play. So that makes sense if he's going to go in the outfield. Yeah.
And chances are that this is a nice streak by Phillip Evans. I'm not saying he's not going to be a good hitter, but he's not going to be a 382 hitter all year.
Of course not. No, he's not Tony Gwynn.
Ride him out until his bat goes down. But the bigger issue, though, Mike, is center field. They have to. Boy, I was dead wrong on Anthony Alford. It's hard to believe that they're still throwing him out there. He has 19 at bats this year, 0 for 19, and 15 strikeouts. That's screaming Brian Goodwin.
Yeah.
Signed from the Nationals and Angels last year. I'm guessing pretty soon Anthony Alford's going to have the tight hamstring or the sore shoulder, and he's going to be put on the DL here because they can't continue just for his own well-being.
Not even making contact. Yeah.
Yeah. He's going up there and he's just not looking like a major league hit. They can't afford to keep throwing him out there just him personally and for the team. So I would be surprised in the next couple of days if some phantom injury doesn't happen with Alfred, and Brian is going to come over from the whatever extended spring training they're doing over on over at Pitt. That it has to happen because they can't continue putting him out there. And Dustin Fowler isn't. He could be a fourth outfielder, but he's not playing. He's not showing anything to deserve more at bats either. So you got to get somebody else in.
No, and yeah, Dustin Fowler is not Dexter Fowler, for example. That might maybe help the team defensively if you do get Alfred out of there. To your defense, Alfred actually did kind of show some signs last year that he could maybe be something briefly, but no, it's clearly not worked for him. I think it would almost be hurting him individually and not be fair to him if you just let him go 0 for 40 with 29 strikeouts. I mean, his value would be in negative numbers at that point, and his head would be totally out of it. Baseball is a mental game. So I wouldn't be shocked if that occurs either. Polanco would be the guy you'd love to pluck out, and it would seem to fit in. But if you want to give him at least through this part 3 of the fixing of the swing, you'd need to give him probably a little time with Hayes in there, since Hayes is not going to be out, long term by any means. I don't think they predicted Phil Evans. I'm sure it'll eventually get figured out because Phil Evans will taper off. But one thing Phil Evans has done ever since he's been up with the Pirates, he has pretty much always hit. Not 382. He's not going to be Tony Gwynn for that Padres reference. But say he's hitting 280 and is your biggest power bat. That's probably more reasonable than I don't know how you take him out of the lineup, because nobody else can hit home runs. That includes Hayes. That's one thing he's not figured out yet on a consistent basis. He hit that home run to start his career, but you can't expect 25 dingers from Hayes. I don't think anybody else on this team besides Colin Moran maybe can get 25 home runs or 30. So if those two guys have the chance at it, you got to keep them in there until they taper off. And if taper off means 290, that's not tapering off. That's going from almost hitting 400 to reasonable average. So we'll see. It's going to be an interesting decision. I don't think anybody thought that when Hayes got hurt, they'd have to worry about tinkering the lineup and fitting him in there. I think they thought, okay, they're just going to suck. Hayes will come back and then everyone else will sit down. There now actually is a thought, and Derek Jones is going to have to make some decisions, and they're going to be criticized if they don't work out. And the funny thing that we know, if Brian Hayes returns to this lineup, hits 2, and Phil Evans get dropped to the 6 or 7 spot, which will probably happen, and somehow this team no longer hits, even though everybody would have to put Hayes back in there, that'll be a criticism, because this offense has picked it up without Hayes, as ironic and as odd as that's been to this point. 3 out of the last 4, this team has been winning.
They just need, Mike, you can't, no matter how well your pitching is doing, you need outfielders and corner infielders,
right,
to bring some sort of extra base potential. And despite Brian Reynolds, he's picked his average up to 310. However, all his hits have been singles.
Yeah.
He's not showing any. And, I'm sure that will change with him. But they need more extra base. They can't just hope for single to score runs. They need double home run. They need some sort of extra base hit power.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's why Evans has to stay in the lineup, because him and, as you mentioned, him and Moran right now are the only guys that are showing the capability of hitting an extra base hit. The rest of it with Newman, Frazier, all these guys, Stallings, who I'm very impressed with. He continues to I
love Stallings. Yeah, he's my favorite Pirate right now.
Evans and Stallings are the best players so far.
Yeah.
But just too much of a single lineup. They need guys with some extra base hits, and that's why Evans has to stay in the lineup until his bat doesn't warrant it anymore.
Yeah, and the position of Evans, the position of Moran, those positions are supposed to give you the extra hit potential. You're not supposed to ask for it from Reynolds and Stallings, and that's the guys that needs to give it to you. And even look to the Chinese water torture of that 7-run inning recently, Mike. All singles. All singles. It was incredible. So, yeah, you can't take the only fear that can even be put into the pitcher's mind that this guy can hit an extra base hit. If they're out of there, they know that they might be able to get on, but this is basically Chinese water torture or death right now, and the Pirates cannot afford that at all.
The other thing, Mike, is Hayes today, he was supposed to – today was the 10 days where and it doesn't, according to all reports, he's not going to be activated today. So, who we still don't know yet. We're talking about it. It's not as though he's being activated today and Shelton has to make this decision today. But from here on in, any day now he could be activated, and then the real decision will be made. But I saw him taking infield yesterday. They need him back in the lineup because he's a guy that can get doubles and triples, and that's what's needed. So hopefully that's the next big thing to happen for the Pirates is Hayes back in the lineup.
Sure, but they're not going to rush him, and they don't even have to rush him right now with how well the team's playing currently, even though that can change any time. They're not going to rush Hayes, and to be fair, and this is what I brought up last night, everybody's also talking and Hayes is clearly the face of the franchise of the future, but Hayes' return is just going to be a slam dunk. He's going to all of a sudden just hit the cover off the ball. He had a month of baseball last year, and then a couple days this year. We still have a lot of uncertainty around Hayes, especially seeing these pitchers a couple times and getting through orders and going a couple months into the season, in a full season, hopefully. So you got to still see what Hayes actually gives you. And it could be a week or so when Hayes returns where he's not hitting because he is still a young player. Even more reason you need the other hitters to be in that lineup. That'll do it for this morning's edition of the show. Check in throughout the week for more Mic'd Up, of course, here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Subscribe to the channel for a notification whenever we upload or go live, and also hit up all the Pittsburgh Now family of network sites. Of course, call Doug Martin at Martin Lawn Services at 412-849-5894 for all your lawn care needs. For Mike Vakovican, I'm Mike Osti. For all of us at PSL and PSN. And thanks again to Martin Lawn Services. That'll do it for this Wednesday edition of the show. Some surprises recently. Connor's decision finally happened, maybe not a surprise. And the Pirates have actually allowed us to talk positively about the team over the last week. So we'll see how long that lasts as well. All right.